The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Admiral Zephyr's voice cracked. Her silver feathers, once proud and gleaming, now hung dull and lifeless around her bird-like face. The Seraphim had ruled the stars for 10,000 years, but today she looked beaten. "The Vex have taken another system," she announced to the gathered aliens. 12 worlds. Gone. In just 3 days. The blue-skinned Aquari delegate's gills fluttered with fear. His species had survived by being peaceful traders for millions of years. They had no weapons, no soldiers, only the hope that someone else would protect them. The crystal beings called Kelthans hummed low sounds of worry. Their bodies sparkled like living diamonds, but all their beauty meant nothing against the coming darkness. The Vex swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. They were not quite alive, not quite machine. Each Vex looked like a spider made of black crystal with red glowing eyes. They moved together like one giant mind controlling billions of bodies. When they landed on a world, they ate everything. Plants, animals, people, all became food to make more Vex. "How long until they reach the core worlds?" asked Counselor Thane. The Kelthan's voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Admiral Zephyr's datapad showed the terrible truth. Red dots marked dead systems. The red was spreading faster each day, eating toward the heart of their civilization like a cancer. 6 months, she whispered. Maybe less. The hall erupted in panicked voices. Some delegates called for evacuation ships. Others demanded they build bigger weapons. A few suggested surrender. But Admiral Zephyr had heard all these ideas before. None of them worked. The Seraphim had tried everything their advanced minds could create. They built massive space stations with guns that could crack moons. The Vex swarmed over them like ants over sugar. They created computer viruses to confuse the hive mind. The Vex adapted in hours. They even tried to talk to the Vex, offering anything for peace. The Vex only responded by eating the messenger. "There is one option we have not tried," Admiral Zephyr said quietly. The hall slowly grew quiet again. "We could send out a general distress call. Ask for help from anyone who might answer." The idea shocked many delegates. The Galactic Council was proud. They were the most advanced beings in known space. They had technologies that could reshape matter itself. Their ships could travel between stars in days. Their medicine could extend life for thousands of years. How could they beg for help from unknown aliens? "Who would we even call?" asked the Aquari delegate. His voice bubbled like water. "We know every species in the galaxy. None are better fighters than us." Admiral Zephyr's feathers ruffled. She had been thinking about this for weeks. In the old archives, there were stories of quarantined worlds, planets so dangerous that the Council had put warning beacons around them, places where life grew so hostile that any species living there would be too violent to contact. "The Forbidden Zones," she said slowly. "The Deathworlds." The hall went completely silent. Everyone knew about the quarantine zones, but no one talked about them. They were marked in the star charts, with warnings that made even brave pilots turn away. Worlds where gravity could crush normal beings. Planets with poison air and deadly storms. Places where evolution had gone wrong and created monsters. "You cannot be serious." Counselor Thane's crystal body flickered with angry light. "Those worlds are quarantined for good reason. If anything lives there, it would be savage beyond imagination. But they would know how to fight," Admiral Zephyr replied. "They would have to. Their entire existence would be about survival." The debate raged for hours. Some called it madness. Others said it was their only hope. Finally, they voted. It was close. But desperation won over pride. The message they created was simple. A basic mathematical sequence to show intelligence, followed by images of the Vex destroying worlds. Then came the plea for help in every language the Council knew. They broadcast it toward the quarantine zones, hoping someone out there would understand. Most delegates went home that night thinking they had wasted time. The quarantine beacons had been in place for centuries. If anything had lived on those horrible worlds, it was probably dead by now. And if it was alive, it would likely ignore their message or be too primitive to help. Admiral Zephyr stayed in her office, staring at the star map. The red dots of destroyed systems seemed to pulse like a heartbeat counting down their doom. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. What if something did answer their call? What if the cure turned out to be worse than the disease? Far away, in a sector of space marked only with warning symbols and the designation Biohazard Zone 12 Terra, automated sensors picked up the signal. They had been waiting in the darkness for a very long time. Deep scanning arrays that had watched the galaxy for decades suddenly came alive with activity. The message was recorded, analyzed, and transmitted to receivers scattered throughout a small solar system. On the third planet from its star, in underground bunkers and hidden facilities, machines began to hum with purpose. The Galactic Council had called for help. Someone was about to answer. 3 weeks after the distress signal, space began to change. It started with small things. Sensor technician Lyra noticed it first during her night shift aboard the monitoring station, Harmony's Rest. The Aquari had sensitive equipment that could detect ships jumping between stars from very far away. Usually, the readings showed the smooth, predictable patterns of Council vessels moving along trade routes. But tonight, something else was moving in the dark. "That's strange," Lyra mumbled, her blue fingers dancing over the controls. The readings showed ships, but they were coming from the wrong direction. No one traveled through the outer rim anymore. That area was full of quarantine zones and dead systems. The ships appeared slowly, one by one, like predators stepping out of shadows. First came small scout vessels, moving with careful precision between asteroids and debris fields. Then larger ships emerged, their hulls dark and angular. These were not the graceful, flowing designs that galactic civilization preferred. They looked like weapons built to kill. Admiral Zephyr received the alert within minutes. She rushed to the command center of her flagship, still wearing her sleep robes. The display screens showed dozens of unknown vessels spread across several star systems. They moved with perfect coordination, but they sent no signals and answered no calls. "How many ships?" she asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. 47 confirmed," reported Lieutenant Kess, a young seraphim with nervous energy. "But our sensors keep picking up more. They seem to be appearing from nowhere." The unknown ships were unlike anything in the Council's databases. They had thick armor, plating, and weapon pods bristling from every surface. Some were massive, bigger than Council battleships. Others were small and fast, darting between the larger vessels like hunting pack animals. "Have they responded to our hails?" Admiral Zephyr asked. "Yes, Admiral. But..." Lieutenant Kess looked confused. "The language is completely unknown. Our computers cannot translate it." The main screen filled with the image of an alien ship. It was rectangular and covered in gray metal, with red lights glowing along its edges. Strange symbols were painted on its hull, in white. As they watched, the ship began transmitting. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything the Council had heard. It was harsh and rhythmic, full of sharp sounds that hurt sensitive seraphim ears. The words seemed to carry a weight of aggression that made even trained soldiers step back. "Computer analysis suggests this is a complex language with military structure," reported the ship's AI. "Initial pattern recognition indicates possible response to distress signal." Admiral Zephyr felt her heart skip a beat. Someone had actually answered their call for help. But looking at these dark, weapon-covered ships, she began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. More ships kept arriving. The unknown fleet grew to over 100 vessels within hours. They moved through space with the confidence of species that owned it. Their formations were perfect, their spacing tactical. These beings knew how to fight. The breakthrough came when Counselor Thane's translation team made contact. The crystal being's natural ability to process complex patterns finally cracked part of the alien language. The first word they understood was simple but terrifying: human. The aliens called themselves humans, and they came from the third planet of a quarantined system. According to the old records, that world was marked as a Class 12 biohazard. The atmosphere was listed as corrosive. The gravity was crushing. The surface temperature swung from freezing to boiling. Nothing should have been able to live there, much less build starships. But here they were. The first real communication came when a human ship transmitted visual signals. The main screen flickered, then showed the inside of an alien vessel. The beings standing there made the council delegates gasp in shock. Humans stood upright on two legs like the seraphim, but they were broader and more muscular. Their skin was a variety of colors, from pale pink to dark brown. Hair covered their heads in different shades, but it was their eyes that truly frightened the watching aliens. Human eyes held an intelligence that was sharp and calculating, like predators studying prey. The human who spoke wore what looked like a military uniform covered in patches and symbols. Her hair was tied back severely, and scars marked her face. When she smiled, it showed teeth designed for tearing meat. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the human said. Her voice was strong and confident. "We received your distress call. We understand you have a problem with something called the Vex Swarm." Admiral Zephyr stepped forward, trying to hide her nervousness. "Yes, we are grateful for your response. The Vex are destroying our civilization. We have tried everything, but we cannot stop them." Commander Chen's smile grew wider, showing more of those dangerous teeth. "We specialize in pest control. Send us the tactical data on these Vex. We'll take care of them for you." "You do not understand," Admiral Zephyr said quickly. "The Vex have destroyed entire fleets. They have consumed 12 star systems. Their technology adapts to everything we try." The human commander laughed, and the sound sent chills through every alien listening. It was not the laugh of someone afraid. It was the laugh of someone excited. "Ma'am, with respect, you haven't tried everything," Commander Chen said. "You've tried everything civilized. We're from Earth. We're not civilized." Behind her, more humans moved through their ship. They all had that same predatory confidence. They carried weapons that looked brutal and efficient. Some wore armor that was painted with frightening symbols. Others had modified their own bodies with metal implants and scars. "These Vex," Commander Chen continued, studying the data that Admiral Zephyr was transmitting. "They're like locusts. Hive mind, rapid reproduction, consume organic matter. Yeah, we've dealt with worse." "Worse?" Admiral Zephyr whispered. "Ma'am, we come from a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. Everything on Earth, the weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria, they all evolved to be deadly. We didn't just survive it, we conquered it. Then we got bored and started killing each other for practice." Commander Chen's expression became serious. "We've been watching your galaxy for decades, waiting for the right time to make contact. When we heard your distress call, we knew this was it. You need killers, and we're the best killers in the universe." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. They had asked for help, and help had come, but it had come with fangs and claws, wearing the face of Deathworld predators. Admiral Zephyr looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet. More ships were still arriving, emerging from the darkness like nightmares made real. They had called for saviors. Instead, they had summoned something that might be worse than the Vex. The first battle happened at Kepler 442b, a peaceful farming world that the Vex had just invaded. Admiral Zephyr watched from her command ship as the human fleet approached the planet. She expected them to use the same tactics as the Council forces. Long-range bombardment from space, trying to destroy the Vex from a safe distance. It was the civilized way to fight. Instead, the humans did something that shocked every alien observer. They flew straight down to the planet's surface. "What are they doing?" gasped Lieutenant Kess, staring at the tactical display. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. "Terran forces beginning ground assault. Council ships maintain orbital distance for safety." Safety? Admiral Zephyr couldn't hide her confusion. "Commander, the Vex convert any organic matter they touch. Ground combat is impossible." "Not for us," Chen replied. The sound of weapons firing could be heard in the background. "We've fought worse things in our own backyard." The humans landed their ships directly in Vex-infested areas. Their drop pods crashed into swarms of the crystalline creatures like meteors. When the smoke cleared, human soldiers poured out wearing armor that looked like it was designed in a nightmare. The Vex rushed to attack, expecting easy prey. They had converted every other species within minutes. Their crystal claws could slice through any known armor. Their hive mind could coordinate millions of attackers at once. But the humans fought back in ways that broke every rule of civilized warfare. Human soldiers used weapons that fired explosive rounds designed to shatter Vex crystal shells. When the creatures tried to swarm them, the humans released clouds of acid that dissolved Vex limbs. Some humans wore armor with built-in flamethrowers that turned attacking Vex into pools of melted crystal. But what truly horrified the watching aliens was how the humans seemed to enjoy the fight. "Contact front," a human soldier shouted over the radio. "We've got a big cluster of them by the old grain elevator." "Copy that, Jackson," another voice replied. "We're moving to flank. Try to drive them toward the river." "Roger. Hey Martinez, bet you 20 credits I can bag more than you today." "You're on, you crazy bastard." The humans were betting on who could kill more enemies. They were treating the desperate battle like a game. Admiral Zephyr watched the battle feeds with growing horror and amazement. The Vex tried their standard conversion tactic, where they would grab organic beings and inject them with transformation crystals. But human armor was designed to resist this. When Vex claws tried to penetrate their suits, the humans activated electrical fields that shattered the attacking limbs. When the Vex tried to coordinate their hive mind attacks, the humans used something called electronic warfare to jam their communications. Suddenly, the perfectly coordinated swarm became confused individual creatures stumbling around blindly. "How do they know how to do this?" whispered Counselor Thane. "The Vex have adapted to every countermeasure we developed over years of fighting." The answer came when they heard human soldiers talking during the battle. "Reminds me of army ants back home," one soldier said while gunning down a line of Vex. "Same stupid pack behavior, same weakness to disruption." "Yeah, but at least army ants don't try to turn you into more ants," his partner replied, throwing a grenade that exploded into shrapnel. "These things are like army ants, mixed with zombie viruses. We dealt with both of those on Earth. This ain't nothing new." The humans had experience fighting hive minds and infectious enemies. On their death world, they had apparently encountered everything the universe could throw at them. The Vex were just another Tuesday for species that had survived 4 billion years of evolution trying to kill them. But the most disturbing part came when the humans started adapting Vex technology for their own use. Human scientists landed on the battlefield while the fighting was still happening. They collected Vex bodies and began analyzing them on the spot. Within hours, they had figured out how the conversion process worked. By the end of the day, they had developed countermeasures. By the second day, they had weaponized it. "Terran Command, this is Research Team 7. A scientist's voice came over the radio. "We've successfully modified the Vex conversion crystals to work on Vex themselves. Deploying weapon prototype now." Admiral Zephyr watched in stunned silence as human soldiers fired modified Vex crystals at attacking swarms. The crystals confused the hive mind, making Vex attack each other instead of the humans. In minutes, entire clusters of Vex destroyed themselves. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Kess. They turned the Vex's own weapons against them. It gets better, Commander Chen's voice came through clearly. We've figured out their reproduction cycle. Give us another day, and we can make these things sterile. They'll die out naturally within a generation. The battle for Kepler 442b was over in 3 days. A world that the Vex had held for months was cleared completely. The human casualties were minimal. A few wounded, none dead. It was the first major victory against the Vex in over a year. But victory came at a price that made many council members uncomfortable. The humans had used biological weapons. They had performed battlefield experimentation on living creatures. They had weaponized enemy technology in ways that violated every treaty the council had signed. Their soldiers showed no mercy and seemed to take pleasure in destruction. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare, Counselor Thane protested during the post-battle briefing. Commander Chen shrugged. Good thing we're not civilized then. You wanted the Vex stopped. We stopped them. You want to complain about our methods? Find someone else to save your galaxy. Admiral Zephyr found herself caught between relief and fear. The humans could win this war, but their methods challenged everything the Council believed about proper conduct. They fought like the monsters from ancient nightmares, but they fought for the right side. Commander, she said carefully, your tactics are effective, but some of our people are concerned about the level of violence involved. Commander Chen's expression hardened. Ma'am, you called for help because you were facing extinction. We came because that's what decent people do when others ask for help. But we fight the way we fight because it works. You can have pretty battles, or you can have victory. You can't have both. She paused, looking directly at Admiral Zephyr through the screen. The Vex don't follow your rules of war. They don't care about your treaties or your morals. They just want to eat everything that lives. To beat something like that, you need people who understand that sometimes the right thing to do is the terrible thing to do. 1. We're those people. We've been those people for our entire history. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should have let your civilization die with clean hands instead of calling the monsters for help. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. Outside, human ships continued their preparations for the next battle. They worked with mechanical efficiency, loading weapons that no civilized mind had ever imagined. Admiral Zephyr stared at the tactical reports. The humans were winning battles that the Council had thought impossible. But each victory raised new questions about what kind of species they had invited into their galaxy. The Vex were learning that they were no longer the most dangerous predators in space. Something worse had come from the shadows, wearing the faces of Deathworld nightmares. 6 months after first contact, the war had changed completely. Admiral Zephyr stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching human ships work in the Kepler 438 system. What she saw defied everything she thought she knew about warfare and civilization. The humans were farming Vex. Explain this to me again, she said to Commander Chen, who stood beside her looking perfectly comfortable with the nightmare outside. It's simple biology, Chen replied, pointing to the massive enclosures floating in space. We figured out how to control their reproduction cycle. Now we breed them in contained environments, modify their genetic structure, and use them as living weapons against the wild populations. Admiral Zephyr watched through the transparent aluminum as thousands of modified Vex moved through the farming stations. These creatures looked different from the wild ones. Their crystal shells were marked with human symbols. Their red eyes had been changed to blue. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to obey human commands. You have domesticated them, she whispered. Like dogs, Chen agreed cheerfully. Earth taught us that any animal can be tamed if you understand its nature. The Vex are just biological machines with crystal brains. Once we figured out how their hive mind works, controlling them was easy. A group of modified Vex moved past the window, carrying equipment for human technicians. They moved with purpose, but without the terrifying coordination of wild swarms. Instead, They responded to signals from human handlers who directed them like shepherds directing sheep. But they were trying to consume all organic life, Admiral Zephyr protested. How can you trust them? We don't trust them, Chen replied. We engineered them. These domesticated ones can't reproduce without our help. They can't survive without special nutrients we control. And, if they ever start acting up. She showed Admiral Zephyr a small device on her belt. This transmits a kill signal that shuts down their nervous systems instantly. The success of human tactics was undeniable. In 6 months, they had reclaimed 8 star systems from the Vex. Worlds that had been written off as lost were now being resettled by grateful council species. The tide of war had completely reversed, but the cost of victory was making many aliens uncomfortable. The humans had not just defeated the Vex, they had learned to think like them. Human research teams studied captured Vex specimens with scientific enthusiasm that bordered on obsession. They mapped the hive mind structure, decoded the conversion process, and reverse-engineered Vex technology. Then they improved it. Show her the new weapons, Chen said to a human technician nearby. The technician brought up a holographic display showing modified Vex crystals. We've increased their conversion efficiency by 300%, he explained proudly. We can also program specific targets. These crystals will only convert organic matter that matches predetermined genetic signatures. Admiral Zephyr felt her blood go cold. You mean you can make them target specific species? Exactly, the technician beamed. We could design crystals that only affect Vex biology. Or if we wanted, we could make ones that affect any species we choose. The applications are limitless. Commander Chen saw Admiral Zephyr's expression and sighed. Don't look at us like that. We're not planning to use these weapons against allies. But knowing how to make them means we understand how to defend against them. The knowledge itself is dangerous, Admiral Zephyr said quietly. All useful knowledge is dangerous, Chen replied. Fire can burn down forests or cook food. Nuclear fusion can destroy planets or power civilizations. The question isn't whether knowledge is dangerous. The question is who you trust to use it wisely. The conversation was interrupted by an alert signal. A new Vex attack had been detected in the Proxima Centauri system. But instead of panic, the human response was calm and efficient. Deploy Strike Group 7, Chen ordered. Standard containment protocol. We want live specimens from this group. Admiral Zephyr watched as human ships moved toward the threat. They no longer treated Vex swarms as unstoppable disasters. To humans, they were resource opportunities. Raw materials to be harvested and processed. The battle was over in hours. Human forces surrounded the Vex swarm and systematically captured every creature. Some would be studied for new weaknesses. Others would be converted into domestic varieties. The rest would be processed into biological components for human weapons. This is not war anymore, Admiral Zephyr realized. This is industrial processing. That's how Earth species survive, Chen explained. We don't just fight our enemies. We understand them, control them, and use them. Humans domesticated wolves into dogs. We turned wild grasses into crops that feed billions. We took deadly diseases and turned them into vaccines that save lives. The Vex thought they were apex predators because they could consume other life forms. But they never met a species that could consume and improve everything it touched. That's what apex predators actually do. Reports came in from across the galaxy. Human tactics were spreading as other species tried to copy their methods. Some council worlds were developing their own biological weapons. Others were attempting to create hive mind controls. The careful, civilized nature of galactic society was changing rapidly. You are transforming us, Admiral Zephyr said, making us more like you. Chen nodded seriously. Evolution in action. Your species were successful in a stable, predictable galaxy. But the galaxy isn't stable anymore. You can adapt, or you can die. We're giving you the tools to adapt. But at what cost? We are losing what made us civilized. You're gaining what will keep you alive, Chen replied firmly. Look, I understand your concerns. My species had the same debates for thousands of years. We fought wars over whether advanced weapons were moral. We argued about the ethics of genetic engineering. We questioned whether survival justified terrible choices. What conclusion did you reach? Chen was quiet for a moment, looking out at the Vex farming stations. We concluded that dead species don't get to be moral. The universe doesn't care about our ethics. It only cares about who's strong enough to survive, and smart enough to adapt. But we also concluded that survival without purpose is meaningless. So we made a choice. We would be the monsters that protect the innocent. We would carry the burden of necessary evils so others could stay clean. She turned to Admiral Zephyr with eyes that held depths of terrible knowledge. That's why we answered your call. Not because we're heroes, but because someone has to be willing to do the dark work of keeping the lights on. New reports arrived showing complete Vex retreat from 3 more systems. The creatures were adapting their own tactics, but they were adapting too slowly. Human innovation was outpacing Vex evolution. How long until they are completely defeated? Admiral Zephyr asked. 6 more months, maybe less, Chen replied. But defeating the Vex is just the beginning. There are other threats out there in the dark. Things that make the Vex look like children's toys. How do you know this? Chen smiled, that predator smile that still made aliens nervous. Because we've been watching the galaxy for decades. We know what's coming. And when it arrives, you're going to be very glad that you called the monsters for help. The war was turning in their favor. But Admiral Zephyr realized they were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the right to define what civilization would become in a universe full of predators. And the humans were teaching them that sometimes, the only way to protect civilization was to abandon it. 1 year later, the war was over. Admiral Zephyr stood in what had once been the Vex primary hive world, now converted into a human research facility. Where billions of crystalline predators had once swarmed, human scientists worked alongside domesticated Vex in clean laboratories. The transformation was complete and terrifying in its efficiency. The last wild Vex cluster was eliminated yesterday, Commander Chen reported, reviewing data on her tablet. Total casualties from the war. 847 human soldiers wounded, 23 killed. Vex casualties, complete species modification. They now exist only in forms we control. The numbers were staggering. A threat that had consumed 12 star systems and killed trillions of beings had been not just defeated but completely restructured in 12 months. The humans had won so decisively that wild Vex no longer existed as an independent species. What happens now? Admiral Zephyr asked. Chen gestured toward a massive construction project visible through the laboratory windows. Human ships were building something enormous in orbit around the former hive world. The structure was angular and heavily armed, like all human technology. But it was also beautiful in its deadly efficiency. Now we make sure this never happens again, Chen replied. That's Terra Station 1. The first of 12 defense platforms we're building around the galaxy's outer rim. Each one is staffed by human crews and equipped with weapons that make our Vex war equipment look like toys. Admiral Zephyr studied the station through her binoculars. She could see human ships coming and going, but she also noticed council vessels docking at the platform. You are working with our people. Of course, this is your galaxy. We're just the security consultants. Chen smiled, but her expression was serious. The Galactic Council has hired us to provide protection services. We handle the big threats, you handle everything else. The arrangement had been formalized 3 months ago, after intense negotiations. The Terran Defense Corps would maintain bases throughout Council space, monitor for external threats, and respond to existential dangers. In return, humanity gained full access to galactic technology, trade networks, and territory. It was a deal that made everyone nervous and everyone safer. "The council members are still uncomfortable with your methods," Admiral Zephyr said carefully. "We know. But they're alive to be uncomfortable, which is what matters." Chen pulled up a holographic star chart, showing the current state of the galaxy. Blue dots marked council worlds. Red dots showed human bases. Green dots indicated joint facilities where both species work together. Look at the results. No major conflicts in 6 months. Pirate activity down 90%. 3 minor threats eliminated before they could become major ones. Your people are safer now than they've been in centuries. It was true. The galaxy had become remarkably peaceful since humanity established its presence. Few species were willing to risk attracting attention from Deathworld predators who treated the Vex as a minor inconvenience. But the price of peace was the knowledge of what protected it. "Show me the other projects," Admiral Zephyr said. Chen led her through the facility, past laboratories where humans and aliens worked side by side. In one room, Seraphim scientists studied human genetic modifications. In another, Kelthan engineers analyzed human weapon designs. The exchange of knowledge was transforming both civilizations. "This is where we breed the new Vex variants," Chen explained, showing Admiral Zephyr a massive biolab. Inside, different types of modified Vex performed various tasks. Some were optimized for construction work. Others were designed for exploration in hostile environments. A few varieties were clearly military in nature. "Are they happy?" Admiral Zephyr asked, watching a group of worker Vex building components for human equipment. "They don't have emotions the way we understand them," Chen replied. "But they're fulfilling their purpose. They consume, reproduce, and build, just like they always did. Now they do it in ways that benefit everyone instead of destroying everything." They moved to another section where Admiral Zephyr saw something that made her gasp. Human children were playing with small, pet-sized Vex that had been modified to be completely harmless. The creatures responded to the children's commands and seemed to enjoy the interaction. "The next generation won't fear them," Chen explained. "To human kids, Vex are just another type of animal. Dangerous if wild, useful if properly trained. You have given them a future," Admiral Zephyr realized. "Everyone deserves a future, even species that try to eat the galaxy." Chen's expression softened slightly. "That's something your people taught us, actually. The Council's first response to the Vex was to find a way to communicate, to make peace. You only called for military help when everything else failed. We learned from that. Sometimes, the best way to save a species is to change what it wants to become." They reached the facility's command center, where Admiral Zephyr saw the true scope of human operations. Monitors showed the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Others displayed threat assessment data and early warning systems. The humans were watching everything. "How long have you been monitoring us?" she asked. Chen was quiet for a moment, then decided on honesty. 73 years. We've been listening to your communications, tracking your technology development, studying your cultures. You were spying on us. We were being careful. First contact with an advanced civilization is dangerous for everyone involved. We needed to understand what kind of people you were before we revealed ourselves. And what did you conclude? That you were worth saving. Chen met Admiral Zephyr's eyes directly. "The Council isn't perfect, but you try to do the right thing. You value life, even alien life. You seek peaceful solutions, even when violence would be easier. Those are the qualities that made us weak against the Vex. Those are the qualities that make you worth protecting." Chen corrected. "The galaxy needs people who choose hope over fear, cooperation over conquest. But it also needs people who can do the necessary killing when hope isn't enough. That's the division of labor we've established. You be the conscience of the galaxy. We'll be the immune system. A new alert appeared on the command screens. Admiral Zephyr watched as human crews responded with practiced efficiency to what appeared to be a minor incursion from outside known space. Another threat? She asked. Small one. Automated scout probes from something beyond the rim. We've been seeing more of them lately. Chen's tone was casual, but Admiral Zephyr noticed the increased activity around the command center. Something worse than the Vex? Potentially much worse. But that's why we're here. Chen smiled, that predator smile that had once terrified aliens but now brought comfort. You called for help once and we answered. Consider this a permanent subscription to the service. And if we decide we no longer want your protection? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then we pack up and leave. This is your galaxy, Admiral. We're guests here. Dangerous guests with our own agenda. But still, guests. What is your agenda? Same as it's always been. Survival, growth, and the protection of those who can't protect themselves. Chen gestured toward the windows, where both human and council ships moved through space in careful coordination. The universe is vast and full of things that want to eat everything that lives. We've appointed ourselves as the specialists who deal with those things. It's what we're good at. 7. With 34. Round. We've con 4. In the motor. We've con 4. We've con 4. We've con 4. Admiral Zephyr looked at the peaceful scene outside. Former enemies working together. Children playing with creatures that had once been instruments of destruction. And the galaxy's most dangerous predators standing guard against even worse threats lurking in the dark. You saved us, she said finally. We did our job, Chen replied. But the real question is what comes next. The galaxy is safe for now. But safety is a temporary condition. There's always something worse out there. Are you ready for whatever comes after the Vex? Admiral Zephyr thought about the changes in the past year. The Council had learned to fight. They had developed new technologies and new strategies. They had adapted to a more dangerous universe. But most importantly, they had allies who smiled when faced with impossible odds. Yes, she said, we are ready. Outside, in the darkness between stars, automated sensors detected movement. Something vast and ancient was stirring in the void beyond known space. New threats were preparing to test the galaxy's defenses. But for the first time in its history, the galaxy had guardians who specialized in making friends out of enemies and tools out of nightmares. The aliens had called for help, and Deathworld predators had answered. Now those predators stood, watch in the shadows, ready to remind the universe that there were worse things than monsters. There were monsters who protected what they loved,